I'm going to walk you through the steps in calculating the cost estimate for a concrete pad. The first thing we're going to do is we have to figure out the volume of concrete that we're going to need for our pad. And so we have the dimensions of it, we just don't have the thickness in this drawing, and so I'm going to go ahead and just put a little liter note on the side of it, and we're going to say that the thickness of this pad is going to be 4 inches. So we have an 18 by 16 pad we're pouring that's 4 inches thick. And so we need to do a volume calculation for that. The first thing we need to do for that is convert that 4-inch dimension make it into feet so that we can multiply for our rectangular prism width times depth times height to get the volume of space that we're going to need. And so to do the conversion, we have 4 inches, and we're going to, that's our given unit. Our desired unit is feet, so 1 foot is equal to 12 inches. That's our conversion factor. And so this is going to equal, if we reduce that down, 1/3 of a foot. So 4 inches is equal to 1/3 of a foot. All right? Now volume is equal to width times depth times height. And so for our concrete pad, the width is 18 feet. So I'll go ahead and put that in. Times the depth, which is 16 feet. Times the height, or the thickness of the pad, we just calculated 1/3 of a foot. So if we go ahead and multiply those numbers together, we get 96 cubic feet. All right. Now, one thing we need to know about concrete is that concrete is sold by the cubic yard. And so we're going to have to convert our cubic feet now into cubic yards to see how many yards of concrete we need for this pad. And so to do that, we're going to take our 96 cubic feet, that's our given unit. Our desired unit is cubic yards, and so 1 cubic yard is equal to 27 cubic feet. So there's 3 feet in a yard, 3 cubed is 27. So that's how we come up with that. And we get an answer of about 3.55 cubic yards. And so how many cubic yards of concrete do we need to order? Well, you can order probably a minimum of a half a yard of concrete. And so we're going to go ahead and have to round up, and when we call the concrete plant, we're going to say we need 4 cubic yards of concrete. All right, another thing that we need to know about concrete, when you're pouring a concrete slab, you have to include reinforcement or reinforcing bars inside that concrete. The reason you have to do that is because concrete is very high, it has a high compression strength. And so that means when we push on it or push it together, it's very strong. However, it's very weak in tension. And so if we pull the concrete apart, it will break much easier than it will under compression. And so the way that we combat that problem with concrete, because concrete will shift and move, is we include reinforcing bars. A lot of times we use what's called rebar for that. A couple of rules you need to know about rebar. In concrete, we're going to try to put that rebar at every 2 feet. Rebar is typically sold in 10-foot bars, and so we have to figure out where we're going to place those 10-foot bars inside of our system on the pad here. It should be placed about 3 inches away from the edge, and so this isn't going to be sticking out of the end of our material, and so that's what you see this line right here is for. And then any time that we overlap rebar, it should overlap 6 inches. And so if we go ahead and start to draw in some rebar here, let's say we're going to put each one of these spaces as 2 feet. So I have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So there's a 10-foot section. Another 10-foot section. If I continue to make those 10-foot sections clear across here, I can lay my rebar in that way. That leads me 6 feet on the other side, and so I'm going to have a kind of a 4-foot scrap piece that's left over. So that'll lead me about 6 feet 6 inches to make sure I overhang the rebar on that side. And so that's what you're going to do, is you're just going to fill in where the rebar is going to go on this concrete pad. All right, and so you can see I've got 10-foot sections filled in with the rebar. I put a note that makes sure we know that if the rebar is not a solid piece, that it needs to overhang 6 inches. And I'll go ahead and write that that's a typical dimension by it. Now our reinforcement bars, if I counted mine up, we're using size number 4 rebar for this. I'm going to need 19 10-foot bars. I'm going to need 9 8-foot bars. And I'm going to need 10 6-foot bars. So like I said, concrete reinforcement bar is typically sold in 10-foot lengths. So I'm going to need a total here of 38 10-foot bars of rebar for my pad. And so that's how you can estimate a concrete pad, the concrete, and also the reinforcement bar.